start with a minute of silence, but I would like to ask you to sit up straight and not sit on your rear end, but put some weight on your knees or hips. So that may involve moving back forward on your chair and having your feet lower than your like a 90-degree angle, more open. And here it's okay to be a little macho. You want to feel that sense of stability of sitting upright and not just depend on your spine and your belly muscles to hold you up, but actually have ground under your feet, or if you sit cross-legged on your knees too. And then just focus on your exhalation. You may have been taught different things. We're going to go through the details. Just focus on your exhalation and gently extend it and feel where in your body it wants to stop, and see if you can allow and maybe even gently give it a push to extend the breath a little further. And then inhalation is natural. Just do that for a minute if you don't mind. So bring more attention into the moment. Start daydreaming, come back to the physical experience of the breath. Stay with what's actually happening. There's restlessness, notice. Come back to the breath and see that you don't have to react to it. Thank you. We should really keep going for the next hour. There's good enough going on, right, in our minds. I don't really need to say anything more, but here we are. So I'm from the Hidden Valley Zen Center. It's also known as Yukokuji One Drop Zen Monastery. It's of the lineage of my teacher Shodo Harada-roshi, and I'm one of his two successors of my age, and then there's one person who's his age. So I went to Japan when I was 24 and stayed there for about 20 years, and I continue to train with my teacher, even though I received full transmission, as it should be, because it's an ongoing, lifelong practice. It's not getting to a certain point and then being perfect. And if you watch what brings you to meditation, there's usually something twofold. On one hand, can you hear in the back, by the way? On one hand, we are often unconsciously trying to get away from something. And on the other hand, we want to go towards something, usually to feel better about ourselves in some way. Avoiding uncomfortable sensations, ideas about how we are not perfect. Most people tend to have rather low self-esteem and master any critics. And on the other side, we are projecting hope for some better future in all kinds of ways. And that will naturally transfer also to meditation. And that's important to recognize that quite naturally, we bring our everyday life attitudes with us to the meditation and approach meditation the same way as everything else. Getting something done, trying to fix something, right? Trying to change something, trying to achieve something. And on the backside of that is always this trying to get away from something. Usually some kind of pain that we may not even be aware of because we've been taught to toughen up or something like that. And then often just running away from any sensation at all because we've shut down as children around some kind of treatment that was less than ideal upbringing. And so we start dissociating, and all of us do that. And as you're aware, today's society makes good money off that tendency, right? Buy this, get that, watch the next Netflix series rather than doing what you should do and you know you want to do, part of you wants to do, but it's much more, it seems it's made so easy to go into those distractions. And meditation can be approached with the same attitude, as I said, quite naturally. We want to get away from something, so we do one more thing, meditation, in the hopes of accomplishing something we are not often fully aware of what's really going on there. So it's very important to become aware of that, because only then can we change our attitude, and only then will the meditation actually deepen beyond a certain point. And that comes down to the difference between self-practice, me trying to get somewhere, and selfless practice. It's not doing nothing, but it is turning around and becoming fully present, not following our conditioning, right? Not following our habit patterns. And it can be quite challenging because we are so used to get somewhere, to try to get somewhere. So in the meditation, you'll find yourself doing the same thing. And there's only one way to really solve that, is to go turn around and realize that what we're doing on the cushion is a shift in focus and a shift on allowing things to happen and allowing things to be and allowing ourselves to be. So away from this constant treadmill of doing, to allowing and staying with and being patient and relaxing with what is rather than trying to fix or change anything. And it's very interesting that if we actually learn to relax with what is, with no more need to change anything, that in fact does change everything, just in a very different way from our projections and expectations. And it does work. I guarantee if you manage to get to the point to fully be relaxed with what is, with no more need for things to be any different than they are right now, you will experience a significant shift. You will start seeing how everything constantly changes, and you will notice that within what we usually think are problems and issues, there is also constant change and constant flux. And then we can learn to use that and follow that and access our deeper wisdom rather than constantly just using our brains. And essentially all those famous Zen stories and koans and the stuff that everybody reads and gets excited about is to bring us back to this very instant, to this radical acceptance of what's here right now. And here comes the trick, but prior to thought, prior to conceptualization. And that does not mean that we need to suppress thought, or that we need to get away from thought, or that thoughts are bad, or that my meditation is bad because there are thoughts. It just means to learn to be with and not engage, not try to suppress, but also not engage the stories. Coming back to the breath is very helpful. Coming back to the physical sensations, what's actually there, and relaxing more and more deeply with the actual experience. And we don't have to like that experience. We have these dreams of experiences and this and that. And those things are real, but they are temporary. You can experience deeper states of samadhi that can be very pleasant, but you want to make sure not to be trapped even there. And on a more superficial level, as soon as we begin to experience even a little bit of settling, even a little bit of more silence, see how your mind starts grasping at it. See how your mind starts congratulating itself and wanting to repeat it, which of course doesn't work. And so it's very important to see that even the deepest possible mind states also constantly change, and that they are also without self. So the fundamental change will really happen once we not just understand, but see through at that moment, see through the fact that there truly isn't any fixed me anywhere. And so we can let go of burdening ourselves with this need to fix a me that doesn't even exist. With the need, let go of the need to suppress thought or let meditation be a certain way that we think it should be, and start to come back to the breath and begin to deeply relax and release all of this burdening extra stuff and come back to this moment. Trying really hard to not think of a pink elephant is not going to work. And yes, yet we do it all the time. So maybe remembering that will help you come out of feeling bad about having thoughts and come back to radical acceptance and use the little bit of space that you begin to gain with meditation to choose to not continue the thought, but come back to the breath. Very, very simply, patiently, over and over and over again. And then commit yourself, give yourself a little bit more to the physical experience of extending that breath. You can only extend that breath if you're really present, right? Otherwise, it'll just stop midway. And working with the breath is also very good because we work simultaneously through all of our conditioning and psychological hang-ups, because these things also manifest in our body. That's why often it is said to forget the body in meditation, but that doesn't mean to ignore it. And that's one of the other very common misunderstandings. Forget the body, forget the mind. There's all this Zen talk about no mind, no this, no that, and nobody has any idea what that could possibly mean, and we use it to, again, suppress, not feel, avoid sensations. Especially men, most of the time, have been conditioned to not feel, so it may be a little harder to make friends with certain feelings that we don't even know what they are. And it's not about analyzing, it's the sensations prior to thought, the sensations with the breath. And you'll start noticing where the tensions are. You start noticing how, in fact, every thought coming up is a tension. And so there's no need to struggle against thoughts. With the breath, sensing the tension as the thought comes up, you're actually able to release it right there. And I'll allow that natural process to continue to deepen, allowing all that extra stuff, all that burdening stuff to release and open and deeply relax, but not collapse. That's a very big difference. And it's incredibly effective. So I'm going to share a little bit more about working with the extended out breath. What is important there too is to keep the eyes at least half open. When you close your eyes, like some meditation teachers advise, you will find that you will either start daydreaming, you may get very sleepy, and at best you will be thinking about meditation without necessarily realizing that you're still thinking about meditation, not actually fully engaged with it, if that makes any sense. Plus, we want to find inner stability in the midst of what's going on. And there's definitely enough going on in our lives and in the world these days. So we don't want to shut anything out and create what would ultimately be an ego bubble, our comfort zone, a new comfort zone called meditation, and outside is the bad world, and here is my new comfort zone, and dwell in that. That creates ultimately more tension and more conflict and more problems. So we do want to keep our eyes and our ears and all of our senses wide open. But we want at the same time to learn to not follow the thoughts about it, not grasp at them, or better, notice when we are grasping at the sensations and the thoughts and the stories, and release it right there. As tension arises, as thoughts arise, we note and we release it right there. And you feel the tension in your body, you feel the thought come up, you feel the being pulled in different directions. And with the extended out breath, you can just allow all activities of consciousness to come to rest. And then engage the lower belly a little bit and extend the breath a little bit further. And there you'll find that that gives a strong focus. And it gives you a sense of your lower body that we often are cut off from. And find strength and stability where you feel like nothing can push you over, including your own mind. And as you notice, we say our mind, we say my mind, but maybe we should just say mind, because we obviously are not really in charge. It's more like our thoughts and our concepts and our conditioning tends to run our lives rather than us, whoever that is. And so we can maybe stop also punishing ourselves for mind doing this, I'm distracted, I'm this and that. It's mind. And what we're looking at in deeper meditation and in Zen practice, and what also many of these koans are about, is directly noticing the principles of how mind functions. That's what the Buddha did, and that's what all the different schools of Buddhism basically are about. They describe observations by people who've really practiced deeply, and there are observations like we've observed the laws of physics. It's how mind works, how everybody's mind works, when we are not caught up in the content of our thoughts. Then you can actually see kind of the nature of the beast versus just our individual stories. Then it gets really, really interesting. But it's not so easy to let go of our involvement with our personalized stories that keep this illusion of being separate going. So what we do is we go back to something that is related to Anapanasati. It's called Susokan, working with the extended out breath. And we extend it to get back in touch with the Tanren, Tantien, Hara. There's various words for it. Martial arts uses it. Get back in touch with our lower belly and learn to relax the upper body and find stability in our lower half. And I say here you can be a little bit macho, because the typical expression of being a little macho shouldn't be like this. It should be more like, right? No matter what comes, there is some stability here. And from that stability, there can be a response to the situation rather than a reaction that comes just from our conditioning. There's a little bit of space where we have a choice again. And we're slowly gaining freedom to not run on automatic so much, but actually see a situation for what it is and see if there's even anything that needs to be done or said. And if so, then we can act fully from our wisdom and not so much driven by all of that conditioning. And the world would be different if more people would take this serious and work in that direction. So you're doing something really, really important here. So also take yourself serious and take it serious. This is not something separate from being out in the world. It may look like we are going in a retreat. It may look like we are not engaging. But it changes from where we live, ideally. Not what we're going towards, but from where we perceive more and more clearly only what is, not so much the filter of our ego. And so then our actions will be different. Our expression will be different. And these things are much more powerful than we think. They ripple through everything and everybody around us when we are putting out on many different levels. And so take yourself serious in that meditation. Action is very important, but we are often a little bit overactive and like a headless chicken maybe. Doing too much, trying to accomplish too much, thinking we have to do and fix everything, and we forget to step back and reconnect with the wisdom that's already there. And this is again the other thing. Learning to allow means underneath it all, we are returning to what's already there, which is us being perfect and complete. And that's what the Buddha realized, right? All beings are endowed with the same clear mind that I have just now experienced, is what he's supposedly said when he awakened. And so in our society, which is mostly Judeo-Christian influenced, we automatically absorb, even if we are not religious at all, we automatically absorb this attitude of there's something fundamentally wrong with me that needs fixing. And so it helps very much to remember it's the opposite. We're releasing that conditioning so that what's whole and complete underneath, right now, not in some distant future, not once I've entered deep samadhi, but right now, what's right now whole and complete, and we are reconnecting with that. And we are only scraping off the unnecessary stuff. We are not following some technique that we become a slave of in order to get somewhere, right? So it takes really, it's very subtle. Right effort is very, very subtle, paying attention to where does the ego come up, and then release it back and keep opening into the moment. And only if something comes up, then again release it and open back into the moment. So it's noticing when extra stuff appears and releasing it and opening into the moment. So opening into the moment in a way is your lifeline, right? Coming back to the sensations, feeling, I don't know, the cool air of the fan, feeling your feet, feeling discomfort is part of it too. If there's a pain in the knee, there's pain in the knee right now, right? We breathe with that, and we gradually expand our capacity to be still and okay with a certain level of discomfort. And that will add to our freedom, because then that doesn't make us run anymore. We don't need to shut down. It also makes us much more human, because everybody has a mind. Everybody goes through these experiences of discomfort. And if you haven't noticed yet, you will notice soon. And we all gonna age and die, and there's no way around it. So eventually we have to learn to make peace with a certain degree of discomfort. There's a big difference between pain and suffering. Suffering is optional. Pain can be avoided, but if you watch your discomfort, the pain in the knee, the wanting to sit a different way in meditation than you're doing, you can make it into a huge problem. That's what mind does, right? It starts obsessing. There's a pain in the knee. Poor me. How long is this going to go on? When is the bell going to ring, right? Or you can let it be, relax with it. And that's a challenge. It's not that easy. Relax with it. Come back to your fundamental practice. Be really curious about what is underneath all of these layers that we add on to what's ultimately pure. What is underneath there? Breathe, extend the out breath in that direction. Straight down, just like gravity. And then eventually, there may still be pain if you look for it. But it's not going to be as bad as if you create all kinds of suffering by trying to run, by tensing up around it, right? But releasing that tension and coming back to the fundamental practice of staying with that extended out breath. Traditionally, you can count the first exhalation. 1, inhale naturally, count the second, 2, inhale naturally, and so on. That's just to give your mind something else to do than all the other thoughts, right? If people working on a koan, they may work with the koan mu. That's not something to think about. It's also to be used with the extended out breath. And as we deepen, once in a while we catch a glimpse of, yeah, how is that thing? Form is emptiness, yeah, maybe I get that, but don't use it as an escape. Emptiness is form. Wow. Right? That's a little bit harder. But it can be experienced if the mind becomes more relaxed and open and you start to sense. You can't grasp this, right? Sense how the mind naturally reflects, just like a mirror. A baby that doesn't has no conditioning and no experience. What does a baby see right now? How does a baby see a tree? There's no clue what that is, no name, no idea what a leaf is, what a color is, no experience under a tree. So they're just in awe, right? That's why small children until 2 can repeat the same thing over and over and they don't get bored. And it's new and fresh and exciting over and over and over again. And we don't need to go out and look for all kinds of excitement, things to do. But if we release all that extra stuff, we start to see the joy again. We start to see everything new and fresh with the eyes of a newborn child that has no conditioning. And that doesn't mean we should go back to only that, right? But we have lost the connection with our true mind underneath it all, this ability where the mind just really functions like a mirror and reflects, and there's no trace. There's no story. There's no labeling. It's just pure, direct experience. And that's where in meditation, you start to feel a little weary and a little bit unsettled, almost fearful, because the layers of conditioning fall away. And it's like, whoa, all of a sudden. And then you read these stories about somebody sitting a couple of nights and in the morning seeing the landscape in this garden like for the first time and everything is shining. It's not rocket science really. It's returning to this fundamental clarity that's, again, right now, it's there. We all have it. It's how our mind or our perception naturally works if we leave it alone. Then come the terrible twos. They are called terrible twos for a reason in children, because that's when the brain develops and we begin to see this separation between self and other. And we are excited when the child says mommy and daddy, but then the child also says no and starts wanting things and not wanting things and exercising this sense of separation. That is, of course, important. We need our socialization, we need our knowledge, but we don't need to be stuck on it. We don't need to let that conditioning run our lives, and we don't need to think that's me. Right? These are things we can use, we should use, we need to survive, we need to help others, right? But we tend to become slaves of all of our knowledge and lose track of what's always right underneath that pure, innocent way of perceiving directly. And we don't need to be worried that we turn all of a sudden into a bad person if we let go of our controlling ourselves all the time. Because really, quite naturally, from this clear mind, right action will come. If we see clearly, if we get in touch with that innate wisdom, we will quite naturally realize that we are one with everything. So we won't hurt or kill anything. We don't even need the precepts if we were able to live in this clear mind. Because then we realize we can't really possess anything. On the level of society, yes, we need things and we need to follow the laws, but on a deeper level, we are born naked and we'll die with nothing. So who is there to say this is mine? And that's just not how it works. So on a much deeper level, you'll see that these precepts are kind of a last resort, but we shouldn't really need them. We should really go back to our original mind, getting in touch with this underlying wisdom that, different traditions give different names: one mind, pure mind, great light, God. I don't care. It means the same thing. In Zen, they often call it Buddha nature, true nature. It's always available. That's the most important thing to realize. We don't need to work so hard to get somewhere because we're already here. But realizing that, paradoxically, takes a lot of work for most of us, because the habit of the delusion that we are separate is so strong. And so we come together to practice and support each other in sitting through some pain and some discomfort and some illusions and all the stuff that pushes and pulls us, and sitting through to the bottom of all of it until who we really are at bottom becomes more and more clear. And with each time we touch that, it'll become more and more clear. It's not an excuse to stop practicing when we suddenly have a little insight saying, oh, I don't need to work so hard, I'm perfect from the beginning, right? Stop practicing. Very easy to do. Except the mind will keep following its habitual patterns again, even if they have stopped for a moment. So we need to keep working on it and being aware of it as much as possible. And yes, go out, act in the world, and then come back to a sitting practice, act out in the world in the most wholesome way we possibly can, because that will make our sitting practice much easier. And so these two parts will eventually come more and more together, and you'll find how deeply meaningful it is to develop a sustained meditation practice. Usually, I say to people, don't overdo it at the beginning. It's very easy to get overly enthusiastic, but you should do it every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, even if you think your meditation is terrible, just bringing yourself to the cushion and stopping everything else is already an important step, right? The conditioning is do everything else. Here we're stopping all the other stuff for a moment. That's already something. Do it at least 5 or 10 minutes every day, ideally morning and evening. 1 time a day is fine. And then begin to extend it. And realize it's not one more thing on your to-do list that will then fall away when you get busy, but it's really the fundamental thing to live from. So this is your life. And this is really what we should live from and see everything else from, and not live our lives and then have this little hobby on the side, right? It's going to start that way. That's quite naturally so. But as you go along in your practice, eventually you'll find you want to sit more, and you'll have these insights where you realize, oh my God, I haven't even begun to practice. Now I see. And then comes another time when you feel the same way again. Make sure your inner critic doesn't take over at that point. I haven't done it all wrong until now. No. Whatever you've been doing until now brought you to the point that now you have realized something. And you realize something that now helps you find your way more accurately. Right? So there is really no wrong practice, and there's no time wasted unless you are twiddling your thumbs and not serious about practicing. All the mistakes, all the trials and errors we do go through on the cushion, they are not wasted. We are learning from this, right? And you're experiencing what minds do, what everybody's minds do. And so we can learn to understand each other a little bit more compassionately. Because if I've seen it in myself, I can see it in that very unpleasant person that I really want to lash out at. And I may do so internally, right? But at the same time, I know I have been in the same boat. I've seen my own mind do this same thing. So maybe I just back off and don't say anything, or wait for a time when there's actually an opening and my clear perception tells me there is an opening, right? I actually sense it, that there may be an opening when the time is to talk about something, and often it's not. Often doors are closed, so why bang my head against the wall, right? So over time, there's a lot to be learned, and there's a lot to be integrated, and a lot to be going deeper into. And the most important point is just keep doing it. Bring yourself to the cushion every day, even if it is just for a short time, no excuses. 5 minutes is fine, but give your life that impulse. Give that to yourself, and in the bigger picture to all of society and humankind. That's really the best thing we can do. Maybe in addition to other activities, but this is really the foundation. When I studied, and even as a teenager, I was asking myself the same question that probably many kids ask. Why do the adults mess the world up like this? We could feed all of the people on the planet easily if you wouldn't be greedy and this and that, right? So why is it that way? And so looking for solutions, right? You look into politics, you look into environmental workplaces, you look into all kinds of efforts to help this. And in my endeavors, I think at that time I realized unconsciously that we have to start with ourselves and then help others to do the same. Otherwise, we may be doing good work, but how can we be sure? There's a lot of good projects in Africa that cause more harm than good. And as soon as we go into these organizations that start to do good work, you'll find people fighting about which way to go, right? It's not that one or the other is wrong necessarily, but the limiting factor is always our ego that rubs against somebody else's ego. Otherwise, it would be easy to feed the world, I believe. It's not rocket science. We have the means, we have everything there to do it. And so we can fly to the moon, right? But we can't distribute the food that's already there, so nobody has to starve. So I think when I was looking at that, I really felt, after sincerely looking into different ways of being useful, that they all had this limitation of the ego. And that the most effective would probably be to start working on that first myself and then helping others to do so as well. So I hope you feel inspired to go a little bit in that direction. I could give you deep-seeming koan-based Zen talks here, but I don't think those are necessarily that useful. They may be entertaining, but you can read them in the book. I can also, hit the desk and pretend, imitate somebody else, but that's not really worth it. We are talking about something very, very down to earth here, something very, very real that we all sense, which has probably brought you here, but at the same time we are scared and we want to keep it at a distance. And part of us wants to know, and part of us is afraid of losing ourselves, and is afraid of letting go and releasing and opening, and afraid of the baggage that we may have stuffed down that will eventually come up. But there are ways to work with what comes up, right? There are ways to work with uncomfortable sensations and stories and trauma that's coming up. So there's help for all of that. So I would like to encourage everybody to have the courage to go as far as you can possibly go in that direction. And Jeff is here to help, and I'm here to help, and there's many good techniques, and there is an unbelievable wealth of knowledge around that you can use, but you have to use it. You can't be used by it. You can't use it as an entertainment and as an escape. So be honest with yourself and make the decision to sit and breathe and release and be present and see what happens. Be curious. What happens if you just sit and release and open and keep opening and keep opening and becoming more and more transparent for that what is, like that mirror that doesn't pick anything up, right? It reflects it precisely, but it doesn't grasp. It doesn't do anything with anything that may be there. And in the process, there is a lot of psychological healing that can happen. And there may be psychological insights. Those are good, but keep therapy over there separate from the sitting practice. Sitting practice is much, much deeper than that. But things will come up, so there may be times where you want to bring the two together. Okay. So this was a little bit different than what I usually do, but there's time for questions. And I'm happy to help if I can. There's usually a couple of times a year there's a group coming from the Dharmabumtemple to our monastery, and you're welcome to join them, usually on a Saturday. We have almost monthly introductions to meditation that are very thorough and barely touched anything. We really go through how to work with the extended out breath, how to use the posture. You can sit in a chair, but make sure you're upright and you're not, you really can breathe and open and have your feet or your knees on the ground and use the right posture so you can actually really breathe here. And I think the next introduction is Saturday, July 5th. If you don't stay up too long, maybe you can make it 9 a.m. So that place is for, sincere longer term practice. We have regular sittings, but people often just come for our retreats on weekends. We do a couple of 7-day retreats during the year. So that's available too, as there's a whole wealth of other places and teachings you can absorb. Just eventually settle on one. All ways lead to Rome, but life is short, so if you try every single way, only a little bit, you may never get there. So at some point, settle down on one thing and just pull through it and stick with it. And how can I help? Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just to get the process right. So you're saying take a longer, deeper out breath if possible. But then you remain focused on the breath and the thoughts come, you just release them.
You stay with the sensations, right? I mean, you can't tell yourself, get rid of the thoughts.
No, the thoughts will come.
Right. So the moment you go off, you realize it, and you go back and get in touch with the sensations of the breath. Really, in your body, where is the breath? How does it feel? Right? And not the thought about that. That's the tricky part.
That's where I was getting it.
That's
then
the
you
tricky
start
part.
thinking about your breath, and
Exactly.
then you start evaluating the breath. That's
Exactly.
the problem.
Yeah, but eventually your mind will get sturdy and calm enough that you begin to sense the difference, to know instinctively the difference. There is a certain feel when you are actually in touch, instant by instant by instant, and all these moments where you notice where your breath is, and you know mentally is again attention in the breath, right? So you kind of get instant feedback. And you'll begin to sense in your body the subtlety of even the little bit of grasping. And keep releasing, keep releasing, keep releasing. There's a particular sense to that. It almost feels like you're flowing. There's an aspect of not knowing, so it's a little bit like you feel yourself blindfolded against the wall, right? You don't really know, but there is direct sensing. And so you can eventually learn that distinction. And that is, in fact, a very, very crucial practice, point in the practice, because we're learning the difference between practice with an object, meditation with an object, which it will be most of the time, because there are thoughts, and even if you are very concentrated, you still objectify the breath or the koan or whatever. But there will be moments where you fall through that, and there's actually sensing, and there's no more me in that. And where meditation becomes objectless meditation, and that's where you begin to see how it works. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Because objectless meditation is free of me objectifying, but it's not that there is nothing there. Everything is in a way even more intimately felt, but without the ego, directly, intimate. So that's where it really becomes interesting. And it's tricky.
That's
And that's-
a long way out for me.
Huh?
That's a long way out for me.
Yeah, and that's where sitting with a teacher can help, you know. Because when you get to that crucial point, it gets very, very, very subtle, and guidance can help at that point. So, but thank you for bringing it up, because that's a very important point in the practice, to feel that distinction between the thought about the breath, the thought about the practice, and actually being in the midst of it. We can't exactly grasp that, but there is another way of knowing where we do know. It's very clear and distinct, but it's not a me knowing. It's not this usual grasping at a fixed idea or object, but it is distinct. So eventually you begin to get a sense of it. Anything else? Yes?
You said something very early in the evening that has just struck me very strongly. You said perceiving the thought.
Right.
And I wondered if you could say a little bit more about that, or if there was anything else to say about it. I just found it extremely striking.
Well, most of the time we think and we don't even notice that we're thinking, right? We think that's reality. We think what's going on in our head is actually reality. And everybody has a different story in their head, so no wonder we are fighting. Correct? So, what the meditation does, that's why we do use the extended out breath, even though there are many meditations that say not to in any way influence the breath. It calms the nervous system more quickly. It actually helps, technically speaking, it helps switch the from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system more quickly. And when your mind is more calm, you're going to begin to sense the thoughts as tension in your breath and in your body, right? And on a more superficial level, you do perceive that your mind has gone off, right? You try really hard to stay with the breath, you stay with the number of the breath, and not go into stories, and eventually you catch it and you come back, right? You already perceived your thoughts in a sense. You perceived that there were thoughts, and you realized they are not what I want to do right now, so let's come back. And the more we don't give into this habit of believing what is going on in there, right? Because that's not me, that's conditioned. We begin to have more choices and begin to have more freedom from that conditioning, from these ideas that we have accumulated. And in part being fed with, right? At school, through our upbringing, through our surroundings, we pick all of those things up. And the moment you notice what's going on in your head, the moment you perceive this is a thought, you come back and can release it and can open into the moment and start living from another place. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't do a very good job phrasing it as a question, but it just, as I say, the idea, I've been studying meditation for a long time, and for whatever reason, that was the first time I heard it phrased as preceding the thought. A lot of time you get.
You mean, sorry,
Yeah,
I actually misheard
so
you.
that's
Said,
all right.
I thought perceive a thought.
No,
perceiving.
yeah, because a lot of the time they talk about let go of the thought, right?
No.
The thoughts already happened. And I had never heard somebody
Prior to
specifically
thought.
say prior to
Yeah,
thinking.
so direct perception that mirror-like awareness is prior to thought. And it's a moment we miss, and it's always there, right? That small child that sees something or somebody for the very first time is still there. It's just that we habitually focus on the thought about it. And in meditation, we bring down, we calm down to the point that we can actually sense this intimacy again. The moment, the instant before the thought, before the grasping, right? And that's where the magic happens. That's where everything starts to feel alive again and real again. And we feel more full and more meaning, right? And that happens prior to thought. And it's not far away. We always think we have to do lots of meditation. It's always happening. It's just we usually miss it, right? And we have moments, all have moments in life where we still feel it. For some people, it's music, right? When a new child is born, something like that, you are just in awe. We have these moments, and we can have this moment right now because our mind still perceives prior to thought all the time. But we are so habitually only living in our head that there's always the separation from reality, right? We inventing a separate reality in our head. And so no wonder we feel disconnected from ourselves and others and lonely and sad and all kinds of things, right? So it's really that moment before the thought. Some people may say, extend the out-breath between thoughts. Yeah, so one thought is gone. What happens then, right? There's a moment of sensing again. And that takes courage because we are sensing into the unknown, or at least what's unknown to our brain, right? It's a different place to live from that we can reactivate. We can just shift that focus away from the content of the thought to what's prior, what's really here, right? It works. You touch something hot, you don't think, oh, now I have to pull my hand away, right? It happens actually prior to thought. Then you go, oh my God. So the difficulty is that it's so close to home that we miss it, not that it's far away. And so it just takes keen attention and a little bit calmer nervous system, and ideally some practice to be able to have more of a choice to live from there more than only up here, which is really being a slave to our condition. Anything else?
Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
Do you have any advice for resisting very powerful attachments, such as to a dying parent, to a dying parent, to a romantic partner? Very powerful attachments. How to fight against those?
Don't fight. Just sit with it, feel it, and eventually you notice how within that it keeps shifting. And you may go through some, there may be some emotions, strong emotions come up. Stay with it, not letting it take over, not going into the stories, not going into poor me or this bad past or whatever, but stay as much as possible with the breath, with the body, with the energy of what's going on, and keep breathing through it and let whatever is going on resolve itself rather than trying to fix something that doesn't need fixing. Your experience is part of being human, right? It's not good, it's not bad. It is what it is. And so you have an opportunity to explore how human mind works. Everybody's, not just yours, right? And the pains and the joys and everything that comes with it, and the reactivity that comes with it. And so you learn to get yourself to know, and you get to know other people simultaneously. I don't know if that's helpful, but the struggling against something is a waste of energy. So whenever you find yourself struggle in meditation, you're again caught in this getting away from something, going towards something. And here you want to stop all of that and be in the moment and feel what comes up. Not when you stir things up by thinking about it, but what's really there right now. And you'll probably be surprised what is really there, because often under one emotion is a totally different one. Under anger is often deep sadness. Under sadness can be something else. And so you're not alone. You can also join other people. There are groups, for people that help with grieving. But the general advice is really don't add another layer of struggle to what's already there. We're very good at adding another layer and yet another layer. But okay, just say, okay, sense it. What's really here? And every time you do that, it will be different. If you really learn to be with what's really going on and what the sensations are really doing right now, and be curious about it. And things will start to change and shift in their own time, right? We can't control these things, but they have a way of releasing beautifully in the order that is best for us. There are mechanisms that protect us from opening cans of worms that we can't handle, right? So these are good, but we do want to dig and take the lid off slowly, stay with a certain amount of discomfort. And it's very fascinating how often underneath all of that is great joy and great warmth and great compassion. So stick with it. I'm sorry you're going through it. I know how that feels. I was just in Europe twice to take care of my 85-year-old mother, who's physically well, but not always mentally. So, anything else? You had a question?
Yeah. So this kind of goes back to the concept of preceding thought or no self, but in so meditation practices I've done at a point of stillness, kind of the concept of observing the observer, or I think I've heard it called like the headless way before. What are your thoughts on that experience of kind of nothingness? Like, does that, I don't know.
Don't fall into it.
Yeah.
And be careful, because working with an observer, you're still separate. You're even more separate, right? What we're doing is bring it back together. We are always separating and separating and separating. And so we are totally fragmented. And here we want to come back to being with all of us, completely present in the moment, so fully engaged that we forget ourselves in what we are doing, whether it's doing zazen or whether it's doing work, right? Forgetting the body is not, and emptiness is not pushing anything away. It's all empty and I'm floating somewhere, right? It's so full, you are so engaged, like when you're doing sports or dance or something you have had to learn, and then you forget yourself in doing it. And there's a creative spark with it usually. And it's not a concept of emptiness. Be really careful there. So I'd say maybe drop the observer, really feel, really sense, really show up for this moment, for this instant of this breath completely. And as you do that, you will naturally notice what interferes, right? And that will tell you a lot. That's how you learn. Okay? Jeff left, guess I have to leave too.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We
Thank
look
you.
forward to the next time.
Thank you everybody for your time and for your good questions.
I have the closing announcement. Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Vicky. We opened the Dharmabumtemple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, sometimes they are, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. Maybe. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with and for anyone with addiction. What's that? Okay. And food redistribution program every Thursday at 4:30. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and bring it back whenever you're finished with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay and help close and latch the windows, that would be nice. Thank you all for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's called the Hungarian Zen Buddhist.